Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. For many years, gamers have been fascinated with the lore of the Warhammer and the Warhammer 40k universe. Featuring a richness and depth to its gothic overtones, this world has promised some fantastic stories and great gameplay over the years. However, it's also well known that the Games Workshop has allowed for what many consider a gross misuse of its license and allowed some truly horrendous games to come out like Warhammer 40k Storm of Vengeance, a horrible tower defense game that was actually a reskin of Ninja Cats vs. Samurai Dogs with several features actually stripped out. So it's no small wonder that aside from the recent Total War Warhammer game, Warhammer games in general have been regarded as worse than the reboot of Planet of the Apes. Trust me, this game is no different. I'm just going to get that out of the way right off the bat. This is not a good game, but I swear to God, if I have to sit through the entire damn game, then you can at least give me a few minutes of your time for this abomination. So let's take a look at the options menu together for Eisenhorn Xenos. Now here we are in the settings menus for Eisenhorn Xenos. We have game settings here. Look sensitivity, controls, which gives you adventure and combat, and none of these of course are rebindable, but as you can see, fairly basic and somewhat relatively intuitive controls. Invert look access on or off, show subtitles on or off, configure gamepad, show tutorials and combat markers are on or off. Now, in addition to this, we have the sound options, which the music is on a slider, 0 to 10. I have it turned all the way down right now for the purpose of this review. We have the sound effects volume, speech volume, audio output speakers or headphone. And then we have graphics, which you have no 4K resolutions. You have all your standard resolutions up to 1440 by 900. In addition to that, we have the adjust gamma correction, which I had that turned all. I actually had the gamma correction turned all the way up because of because I had a lot of sunlight coming in through my back window. That's why. And texture detail, low, medium, or high. Cool. Post-process effects. Now we have depth of field, ambient occlusion, motion blur, barrel lens, chromatic aberration, FXAA, bloom, light shafts, radial blur, sharpen lens flare. Surprising. I'm actually somewhat surprised by the post-process effects in there. VSync, and you have an option to lock it at 30 FPS, which maybe that would help the game run smoother, because as I've said, this game is not in a good playable state on PC right now. It's riddled with bugs, frame rate drops, hard glitches, crashes, all kinds of fun stuff. So, but it is capable of running above 30 FPS, just not very well. Now, that's basically all there is. And you'll notice that even though this does have a mouse interface on the menu here, there's nothing whatsoever about keyboard and mouse controls. Well, this game, you are capable of doing things with the keyboard and mouse, but the game doesn't tell you what any of the controls are. You have no way to reset them, change them, do anything with them through the game's interface. And they didn't even really seem to give any thought whatsoever to the keyboard and mouse, which is the primary source of input for PC games. And that's surprising to see for a PC game port. This strikes me as exceptionally lazy and not a good sign at all. Eisenhorn is a third-person action-adventure game with stealth elements that takes place in the Warhammer 40k universe. Now, before we get into things too much, you have to understand that this is a port from Android and iOS to PC, which is, if you were playing this game on a mobile device, I would be extremely impressed. I would. However, this is PC, and this is by no means what you would call a good PC port. Now, the story starts us off with the Inquisitor Eisenhorn investigating a break-in to the local cryostasis chamber. which, of course, in the 40k universe means hundreds and thousands of people because everything's just got to be bigger, right?
Rows and rows of ice berths ranged down the smooth basalt chambers. It was like walking into the Imperium's grandest morgue.
And this is where Eisenhorn and his team get their first glimpse that they've stumbled onto something larger than they thought. And this is where I stumbled onto graphical glitches, horrible gameplay mechanics, and a few other issues to boot. Now, right off the bat, I noticed that while the graphics aren't necessarily bad for the price point of the game, they're certainly not great, and it's noticeable right away that this game was not ported well. Graphical stuttering, pop-in, constant frame rate drops, AI breakage, interface breakage, and outright hangs and numerous game-breaking bugs run rampant through this game, and I experienced all of those within the first hour. Now, as we continue through, you're narratively introduced to your game mechanics through one of the most horrible tutorials that I've ever seen. Nothing is explained here, and thankfully the gameplay mechanics are so ultra basic that even an idiot like me could figure them out. And you have three basic modes. There's the normal walking around mode, which is exactly as it sounds, a fairly standard stereotypical third-person adventure game. Now, with the game in general, you should use a controller. If you don't have one, then move on. Don't buy this game, like, at all. The game does support keyboard and mouse, but it doesn't tell you what any of the controls are, and there are no options for it in the game menu, and the controls themselves are horrendous. Granted, the controls are still only about 3/4 functional with a game controller, but they're still worlds better than the keyboard controls themselves. Now, you also have Eisenhorn's psychic powers, which sometimes allows you to detect hidden items. It gives you some other investigative abilities via a minigame where you rotate a scanned image of a brain around until you find the orange highlighted areas. From there, it's as simple as holding down the A button until it fills the ring surrounding the selected area. And of course, the game does absolutely fuck all to explain this is how the minigame works. So, without this prior knowledge, I naturally failed my first attempt. And after I figured out how the minigame worked, of course, I realized that it was about as meaningless and shallow as the rest of the gameplay that Eisenhorn has to offer. The third mode is, of course, the combat mode. Now, for the combat mode, you have your sword and gun, psychic attack, and this game's barely functional version of the VATS slowdown from Fallout. Now, your sword strike is pretty self-explanatory, but functions about as well as someone whacking someone over the head with a wiffle ball bat, and half the time you get locked into this lame cycle of sword strikes and blocks that I know are supposed to represent an actual sword fight, but it just feels irritating and pointless and poorly programmed.
You're using Bonetti's defense against me, huh?
I thought it fitting, considering the rocky terrain.
Naturally. You must expect me to attack with Capaferro.
Naturally. But I find that Tibble cancels out Capaferro. Don't you?
Now, in addition, you have the handgun, which does okay, but its actual damage output is so insanely low as to be virtually pointless. Meanwhile, your enemies shoot you with a gun that takes away a third to half your health in a single hit sometimes. And then you have your psychic strike, which serves as a literal leg sweep and does nothing else except keep someone off you for a second or two. Now, in the meantime, while you're doing just slightly above zero damage to your opponents, you're consistently dealing with opponents that are taking a quarter to a third of your health. And the boss fights? Well, those are either opponents that are capable of killing you outright in a single move, which is, those are the sorry excuse for QTE Force game bosses, and then making your health, they make your health bar completely pointless and useless. I don't think the game honestly knows what a health bar is even half the time.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Now, I know that I've been giving the game a lot of grief, and I'm not done yet, but I have to say that the story in the game is actually an interesting one. It is. Eisenhorn and his team stumble on a conspiracy by a powerful family to overthrow the God Emperor, and in their doing so, they've been in contact with a race of the Agents of Chaos. For those of you that don't know, Chaos is an evil and corrupt force that serves as Warhammer Universe's bad guys and boogeymen all rolled into one. Now, corrupted by the essence of pure evil, the Chaos Soldiers are exceptionally tough opponents that can be more than a challenge for even the most hardened soldier. Or so they say. Through the latter portion of the game, you fight Chaos Soldiers almost exclusively in an effort to end the influence of Chaos, put a stop to the plot to overthrow the God Emperor, and of course, what story wouldn't be complete without a little betrayal? Now, it's a good story, well written, and very in keeping with the 40k lore. Of course, it introduces some new elements, but the addition of the alien chaos race was explained adequately, if a bit shallowly, and maintained the overall flow of the story. Now, the problem I have here isn't with the story itself or the plotline in general, it's with the delivery. The voice acting in this game ranges the full spectrum between boring to bad to dull as shit. The voice acting for Eisenhorn himself is bland and soulless, which could be argued as somewhat in keeping with the dull emptiness of his character. But everyone else's voice acting felt either inexperienced or simply phoned in. Even with all the badness that I had to wade through with the game, it could still have had some potential if the voice acting just straight up didn't ruin it for me. Now, the game's overall play length will take you around 9 hours to complete, and after you do, you unlock 2 additional characters to add as companions on missions, and you also unlock the hardest difficulty level. But the game's lack of meaningful choice for any form of branching storyline, it's completely on rails, and because of this, the replay value of the game is exceptionally low. There's just not enough to keep you engaged enough to warrant multiple playthroughs. Hell, I had a difficult enough time battling through the game until the end enough as it is, let alone a second time. No, I'm not doing it. So unfortunately, the game on PC is broken. I encountered a full 4 hard crashes where I actually had to reboot my computer in order to restore functionality. I had to back out of the menu and go back in more times than I could count. Full of graphical stutters, shitty AI, broken AI, game-breaking bugs themselves, lame, half-functional controls, and poor voice acting made this game an absolute chore to play through, which is such a shame, too, because the story showed so much promise. And apparently this is adapted from a series of books that are regarded very highly. However, the stigma with mobile device games being ported to PC unfortunately is not going to be broken today, as Eisenhorn Xenos earns itself a 3 out of 10. Everything about this game screams bad PC port coupled with poorly implemented game mechanics at its core, and overall a horrible experience that I wouldn't wish on anybody. Do yourself a favor, folks. Stay away from this game. It's not worth your time or your money. Thanks for watching, and feel free to let me know your thoughts in the commentary down below, especially more thoughts about the Eisenhorn story as a whole, because like I said, this is a very well received series of books in the Warhammer 40k universe, and I actually do intend to go and read those books now, having experienced the story here, but the game itself is not worth your time or your effort, guys. And while you're at it, don't forget about those like, subscribe, and share buttons. Once again, I am SidAlpha, and I will see you next time. Hi there, boys and girls. Thanks for checking my video out. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to hit that like button and maybe even that subscribe button. Trust me, it works really good. Don't forget to share with your friends, and if you're interested in following me on Twitter and Facebook, the links for that are in the description down below. I also have a Patreon if you're interested in helping to support the growth of my channel, and the link for that is down below as well. And once again, thanks for watching and supporting my channel, guys. I really appreciate it.